The Jets lose a game they deserve to lose, and this team is now in deep trouble. Unfortunately, there's nothing but despair today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we have a game to break down today. Unfortunately, it's not a good game for the Jets as they were defeated last night by the Buffalo Bills 23-20 at MetLife Stadium. I got to tell you, I was so upset after this game. I just sat down for like an hour, and I spent that time asking myself, why do I care so much about this team? Because every time I get my hopes up for this team, they crush them. This season had so much expectations. They made all those moves in the offseason. They bring in all these big names. Aaron Rodgers is back. It's the same old stuff. I'm not going to use the phrase. I'm not going to use the SOJ expression because I hate that. But it's like nothing ever changes with this team. I sat there just wondering, why do I support this team? And I did not come up with a good answer. So we'll work on that. But we do have a game to break down. And I think it's fair to say the Jets deserve to lose this game. You know, sometimes you walk away from a game and you say, you know what, my team had some bad luck in that one. You know, we played really well. It just the breaks all went against us. The Jets had a lot of breaks go for them in this game. I mean, maybe these aren't breaks. Maybe the first two things I'm going to mention aren't breaks, but Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall both had their best games of the season. Finally, Breece got going. And you know, I think some of the credit goes to the play calling because I think they did a better job getting him the ball on the perimeter on sweeps and things like that, putting him in positions to make big plays. I think they also did a better job utilizing him in the passing game than they've done in recent weeks. So credit to Todd Downing there. Breece Hall had over 160 yards from scrimmage, 18 carries, 113 yards. 5 catches, 56 yards. Garrett Wilson also got going. I know Garrett had over 100 yards last week, and look, Garrett played well last week, but you know the Jets were really force-feeding him targets last week. He had 22 targets. This week, only 10 targets. He has 8 catches for 107 yards. So the Jets' young stars finally played like young stars. It's taken them a while to get going this season, but they finally got things. They finally got cooking. The other aspect of this, I mean, how many breaks did the Jets catch in this game? They had a Hail Mary completed right before halftime. Unbelievable. I know Aaron Rodgers is the GOAT of Hail Marys, and it was an amazing play, but it came at a point in the game where it felt like this thing was really slipping away from the Jets. Josh Allen had just made an incredible play to put Buffalo up 10. The Bills were going to get the ball in the second half. Felt like the Jets were on the ropes. And they catch this unbelievable break as Allen Lazard comes down with an Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary. And I joked during the game, during the second half, that like right before the Hail Mary play, I guess Allen Lazard and Mike Williams switched bodies because suddenly Lazard's making all these catches and Williams can't catch anything. Some of the calls that went for the Jets in this game. Now the officiating was horrible, and there were calls that went against the Jets certainly. I don't think the officiating was biased against the Jets. I mean, sometimes you have a game where the officiating is terrible and you say that officiating was biased against our team. This officiating was just bad. There were calls that went against the Jets in this game, but there were some pivotal calls that went in their direction. I mean, you think about the roughing the passer or the unnecessary roughness penalty on AJ Epinesa that put the Jets in scoring range, that led to a Jets field goal drive, or that the new tuck rule thing, which I guess the rule was called as it was written, but what a dumb rule that is. The fact that play that extended the Jets drive where Aaron Rodgers, let's be honest, that was a fumble. The rules say it was an incomplete pass, so the Jets got a new lease on life, and they could not take advantage. And those are the hallmarks of a bad football team, where things go your way, but you can't take advantage, and just can't take advantage. I mean, there are reasons the Jets couldn't take advantage. One, we can start with the run defense. That first series, the Bills go right down the field and score. I mean, Jets come out, they get a field goal. You feel good about the offense. The defense goes out and gives up a touchdown. 9 plays, 8 runs. 8 runs. The Bills averaged 7 yards per carry on that series, and the Jets' run defense did not get any better during this game. The Jets allowed 149 rushing yards in this game. We've talked about all season long the issues with this defensive line, and they really came home in this one. I've been talking a lot about how even though the Jets' defense statistically looks really good, that they're kind of a paper tiger, that they're they're not nearly as good. And when they face better offenses, they very well could be exposed. And that's what happened in this game. The pass defense was terrible. And I mean, Jets now, we'll see what happens with DJ Reed. DJ Reed had his worst game of the season, multiple penalties. Now, one or two of them was a shaky call, but Jets defense got torched in the passing game. Josh Allen, 19 of 25, 215 yards, 8 points, an 8.6 average, 2 touchdowns. Jets defense was just awful in this game. And it was, if the Jets get one more stop, I mean, maybe something happens. They were so undisciplined in this game. There were some aspects of this game where it felt like the coaching staff was upgraded. The play calling, Todd Downing over Nathaniel Hackett was one of them, talking about how Breece Hall got going in this one, how they did a better job kind of keeping the Bills off balance. They did a better job with some of the formations. There was a lot that was better with Downing than with Hackett. There were also moments where I think Jeff Ulbrich did a good job. That Hail Mary was very easy to lose track of this, but I noticed it at the time. Jeff Ulbrich was very aggressive using his timeouts at the end of the first half when the Bills were in scoring range. And that left the Jets enough time for Aaron Rodgers to complete a Hail Mary. Because if Ulbrich doesn't use his timeouts, the Bills just run out the clock and the Jets never get the ball back. So Ulbrich managed the game well in that situation. But I still walked away from this game feeling like, despite those moments where it felt like the Jets were better coached, I still walked away from this game feeling like this football team looked like a Robert Saleh coach football team. Again, like I don't know if using the aggregate penalty stat is really helpful because of how bad the officials were in this game. The Jets committed 11 penalties for 110 yards. Now, Buffalo also committed 11 penalties, but that's frustrating because that's one of the reasons the Bills had so much trouble scoring in the second half is the Bills kept putting themselves behind the sticks with the penalties. Now, Jets had 11 penalties. I'm not going to sit here and tell you all of them were legitimate penalties, but some of them were. I mean, how about Javon Kinlaw in that last series, that Buffalo series? 3 penalties, including one where he loses his composure. And you want to talk about a lack of discipline? How about taking an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in a dead ball situation after a field goal that puts you behind in the fourth quarter? Javon Kinlaw, what a bust this guy's been, and he's got pushed around in the run. He was one of the biggest culprits in the run game. Just everything that's frustrating about this game is because the Jets did a lot to contribute to their own demise. The Jets had every opportunity to win this football game. And look, if the Jets won this game, I think our buddy Joe Marino at Locked On Bills would be doing a podcast today talking about how the Bills threw away this game. This was not a well-played football game. And one of the most, there are so many most frustrating parts of this. So I don't want to use the phrase, this was the most frustrating part. But another thing that was really frustrating is that the Bills did not look good in this game. I came away from this game feeling like the Bills are not a heavyweight in the AFC. This is not a team with a dangerous amount of playmakers on offense. It's a team that seems like it's got its own coaching issues. It's a team that seems like they underachieved in this game also. I mean, they left the Jets so many opportunities to win this game when the Jets weren't playing well. And this very well could be the type of division in the AFC East where 9-10 wins get you the division title. The problem is that it's just difficult to see how the Jets get there right now playing like this because they can't get out of their own way right now. And I've got to be honest with you, we talked a lot about the offseason about how this roster looks good on paper. Well, it doesn't look that good on the field. Ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we're going to talk about some of the culprits. There are some guys who just are not playing up to their career levels at this point of the season. And we'll talk about, these are guys who cost the Jets against the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. Let's talk about the underperformers as we continue here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. On FanDuel right now, somehow the Jets are 1.5-point favorites going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers next weekend. I mean, I'd like to be nice to our sponsors, but I don't know what FanDuel's thinking on that one. But I don't know. Maybe you think the Jets will turn it around. FanDuel's the place to get in on the action because, again, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Or, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't blame you if you bet against the Jets at this point. I won't tell. FanDuel's the place to go. Just visit FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. A big shout out to you, everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We're here to recap an ugly Jets loss that they were defeated last night by the Buffalo Bills 23-20 at MetLife Stadium. Football can be a very complicated game at times, but sometimes it's also a simple game. And when you lose in the trenches on both sides of the ball, you're probably going to lose the game. And I feel like that's what happened to the Jets in this game. I feel like there were other things that contributed to the loss, but the Jets were just manhandled up front. I gave you some of the stats in the first segment. Jets run defense, once again, does not do the job. It's been one of the ongoing stories of the season. The Bills run for 149 yards on 33 carries, averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Jets also struggled to get to the quarterback. They did have 2 sacks on Josh Allen, but when they got to him, it felt like it was Allen making a mistake. It felt like it was Allen kind of running into somebody. We've become accustomed to the Jets having a very good defensive line here. The last 2 years, it's been one of the strengths of the team, but you can't take these things for granted. You can't get complacent. And I don't know, it feels like the way the Jets have built their roster, they became a little complacent with their defensive line. A lot of good players went out the door, and the replacements have just not been effective. And look, part of the story is obviously the Hassan Reddick situation, which we've done and could continue to do more podcast episodes on. But this defensive line is just not good enough. I've been worried. I know the Jets went into this game with a very good defense statistically, but I've been worried that this unit was a paper tiger. I felt like a lot of their statistical success was based on the opponents. They played against Will Levis, who kind of gave the game away against the Jets for Tennessee in week 2. They played against New England, who may be the worst team in the league right now. New England couldn't do anything on offense, even if they wanted to. They go up against Bo Nix, who can barely throw the ball. That game it was ridiculous. It was one of the most inept quarterback performances I've ever seen. Even last week against Sam Darnold. We know Sam's flawed, and Sam kind of regressed in the second half of that game. Jets can't stop the run, and they struggle getting to the quarterback right now. And look, I'm finished with Javon Kinlaw. To me, this was a catastrophic signing. And one of the reasons it's a catastrophic signing is a lot of people don't realize this. Signing Javon Kinlaw cost the Jets a 4th-round pick. They would have gotten a compensatory 4th-round pick for losing Bryce Huff to Philadelphia if they had not signed Javon Kinlaw. So they essentially traded a 4th-round pick for Javon Kinlaw, and this guy's doing nothing. You want to talk the penalties were obvious. The penalties were all terrible. I thought all of them were legitimate. But even if we get away from the penalties, what's this guy producing? If you watch this guy is getting manhandled left and right in the run game. He can't stop the run at all. He's one of the biggest culprits, but it goes beyond him. Michael Clemens, sheesh, this guy's getting too much playing time, and I don't know what the solution is. And Michael Clemens got lost on the play that allowed Buffalo to clinch the game. He was the read guy. Josh Allen, he misplayed it, and Josh Allen took the ball and ran it for a first down to ice the game. Jets at least would have gotten the ball back with a shot to tie it or win it if they get a stop on that play. And the Bills knew what they were doing. I'm sure the Bills knew in a key spot they were going to isolate Clemens. They were going to force Clemens to make a play. He failed to do it. This Jets defensive line, and we could go down the list. Leki Fatu. I'll tell you something. That's not the solution to the run defense. There was a lot of hope that he's a run stopper. Maybe things will be better once he's back in there. I don't think so. Quinnen Williams. I know he made that one play. I know he had a sack. We're to the point where it's time to be worried about Quinnen Williams because Quinnen Williams is not playing like Quinnen Williams. We're talking about struggling Jets young stars. Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson got going last night. Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson gave you an opportunity to relax and say, okay, they're going to be okay. We don't have that with Quinnen Williams right now. Quinnen Williams is not having a good season, and there were just too many instances where he's getting washed out, where he's getting manhandled. I don't know what's going on with Quinnen. It's officially time to be worried about Quinnen. If it wasn't already, it's officially time to be worried about Quinnen Williams. And then on the offensive side of the ball, on the line of scrimmage, I mean, just dreadful performances. The tackles. Morgan Moses, I mean, I hate to say this, but now I see why Baltimore gave him up for so cheap. At the moment, I thought when the Jets traded for Morgan Moses, I thought it was a great deal. I was like, I can't believe how cheap they got him. I think now we see why. I mean, it just looks like it's over for him. And that's the danger. We talked all offseason about the danger of going in with two 33-year-old tackles. One of the issues was potential for injury. Moses has been banged up this season. The other is decline. When guys can't play at a high level forever. Morgan Moses is really struggling out there, but that's to say nothing of it. I know when I mentioned Moses, I know a lot of people were like, well, what about Tyron Smith? I was getting to him. This signing has been a disaster. And, speaking of things we now know in hindsight, it's kind of obvious why Dallas did not match the Jets' $6 million guaranteed offer. Because Tyron Smith, look, I don't think he's completely washed up, but he's getting there. This was a brutal performance. You talk about, giving up sacks, not hitting blocks, a holding penalty that wipes out a touchdown. You just can't have that. There was a play in the fourth quarter where if he hits a block on a corner, Breece Hall may take it to the house. He can't even hit a block on a corner. This guy, he's clearly in decline right now. He's hurting the team. I mean, I guess he's better than the alternative. I don't think Olu Fashanu is ready to play. I don't think he's totally washed up, but this guy's played nowhere near the level the Jets were hoping for. I think the Jets were hoping they'd get an elite tackle. I think the Jets were hoping they'd get the player Tyron Smith has been through most of his career. Well, it hasn't really happened. It's ugly. And there are other guys you have to look to in this game. Mike Williams. I mean, look, I don't think the interception was Mike Williams' fault. I thought Rodgers made an awful throw. After the postgame press conference, Rodgers tried to claim that Williams ran the wrong route. Well, unless Williams is running a 50-yard hitch, I don't know what sort of route would require him to come back to the ball at that point of the field. Rodgers just badly underthrew him. It was an awful throw, and Rodgers trying to point to not be so diplomatic. I think Rodgers is trying to point the finger at somebody else instead of just taking the blame for something that was his fault. But Mike Williams has been a zero for this team this year. Dropped a pass in this game. Like I said, I joked that right before the Hail Mary, Mike Williams and Lazard switched bodies because for the Hail Mary and for the second half of this game, Lazard kind of looked like the player Williams has been for most of his career, and Williams looked like the player Lazard's been for most of his career. That's another sign. It just looks like it hasn't panned out at all. All these moves the Jets made for these guys who were kind of rolls of the dice. Seems like the Jets are coming up snake eyes on these moves. And of course, unfortunately, Greg Zuerlein's also having an awful season, misses 2 field goals, including a chip shot. Part of a sequence. You want to talk about areas where the Jets lost this game. How about twice getting inside the 5-yard line and coming away with 3 points in the second half? How about 3 times getting inside the 30 and coming away with 3 points combined? Greg Zuerlein missing a pair of field goals. And that's the thing with kickers in the NFL. I always say this is the reason you don't pay kickers in the NFL. Because you never know. Like some guy could just have a bad season out of nowhere. That guy could have a good season out of nowhere. It's just totally kicker performance is just totally random in the NFL. And Greg Zuerlein's a good example of that because he is having just an absolutely brutal season. I mean, it's difficult to understand. He'll probably come back next year and play really well. But I think we're to the point where the Jets have to bring another kicker in. And look, I'm not saying you have to cut Greg Zuerlein. If you like Greg Zuerlein, if you believe in him, going forward, that's fine. He can stay on the team. But I think they just need to give him a break right now. Just bring in another kicker. Carry 2 kickers on the roster. Deactivate Greg. Let him work things out in the practice. Let him get mentally right in practice. But it's just not working for him right now. It is ugly, man. It's bad. I don't want to say it's as bad as I've ever seen it because I've seen it really bad. But this is up there. And you're on the Locked On Jets podcast. Let's talk about where the Jets go from here. We're to the point where I don't even want to hear about a trade for a certain receiver. I think you know who that receiver is. Let's talk about why the Jets should not even consider being buyers as we continue here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to go to get last-minute tickets, and Game Time now has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It looks like it's going to be a bad season for the Jets. Sometimes it's fun to go to a late season game, though, when the Jets are out of the playoff race and the tickets are really cheap. Game Time is the place to go because Game Time has the best deals for you. I've used Game Time myself. It's so easy. Even an hour or two before the event begins, you can pull it out on your phone or other mobile device. You won't believe the deals you get. And my favorite part is that you get the view from your seat. They show you a picture of what it's going to look like from your seat. So no surprises, no obstructed views. Everything's as you expect once you arrive at your venue. You can use Game Time for sports, music, comedy, theater, anything you want. Just go to the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDONNFL, one word with no space, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Monday, a very sad Monday for New York Jets fans as the team fell to 2-4 last night. The Buffalo Bills beat the Jets 23-20. Look, the loss is bad. The way the Jets lost makes it even worse. Even if the Jets had played well last night, I think at 2-4, this team would be in really rough shape. But it's really tough to see where the team comes back from here. 2-4 doesn't always end your season. I'm not even going to say the door is completely closed on the 2024 Jets, but this team took a big hit. I went into this game thinking like the season very well might be on the line. And look, the Jets may only be a game out of the playoffs today. But you have to also consider the trajectory of the team. You also have to consider what the team's capable of. I think we can assume that probably, even though right now the Jets are a game out, it's going to take 10-7 to get to the playoffs in the AFC. Because one of these teams is going to get hot. One of these teams that's kind of floundering right now, they're going to get hot. And they'll get the 7th seed. They'll probably be 10-7. For the Jets to get to 10-7 right now, that means they have to go 8-3 the rest of the way. And this is the reason why getting off to a good start is really important in the NFL. In baseball, you have a bad first 5-6 games. It's not a big deal. You have plenty of time to play. The same's true in basketball. The same's true in hockey. The season's long. In football, the season's short. And you can say, well, it's early. It's only 6 games in. Well, there's only 11 to go after this one. And again, when you put yourself behind the 8 ball like this, you need to play incredible ball the rest of the way to make up for it. I mean, do you think this Jets team is capable of going 8-3? A team that goes 8-3 from this point forward is going to be the best team in the NFL for the rest of the season. And I don't see anything that makes me feel like this Jets team is capable of it. Yeah, I know they're playing close games, but I just don't think this team is going to get better as the season goes forward. When you look at the aging players they have on this roster, I mean, Rodgers continues to collect the hits. And another time or two last night where he took a big hit and didn't seem like he responded well from it. I mean, he's not going to survive the season at this rate, especially the way Tyron Smith's playing. And Tyron Smith's not going to get better. I don't think Morgan Moses is going to get better. I mean, look, maybe they get Reddick back. I know there's some speculation Reddick has new agents. We'll see what happens. Drew Rosenhaus is not exactly a guy. Drew Rosenhaus is Reddick's new agent. And if you're not familiar with him, not exactly a guy with a reputation for being a reasonable negotiator, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see on that front. Maybe they get Reddick back, but Reddick can only fix so much on this defensive line. Reddick's not going to help that much with the run defense, where the Jets just keep getting pushed around. So what I'm going to say here is enough with the Davante Adams talk. I mean, you think Davante Adams is going to make that big of a difference for this team? And look, I know you'll say, well, the Jets receivers dropped a pass the last couple of games that could have made a difference. I don't want to hear that because we don't know that ball would have gone to Davante Adams anyway. We don't know that Davante Adams would have caught it if it was thrown to him. He may have dropped a pass. Look, this team's not a receiver away. And look, the Jets should have enough receiver talent on paper to make this offense work anyway. So I just don't want to hear any more about Davante Adams. The Jets have thrown so many resources at building this team up. There are a lot of teams that are doing more with less at the wide receiver position. A lot of teams don't have a Garrett Wilson on the team. A lot of teams, and Mike Williams has been awful, but he's at least got talent. Even Lazard's like playing better than a lot of people expected him to, even if he's not playing that well. Lazard went over 100 yards last night in part because of the Hail Mary. Also had made up for a huge penalty in the first half. I was so mad at Lazard when he committed that penalty because he wiped off a big play. The Jets were going to get a pass interference penalty and he couldn't line up correctly. So that drove me nuts. But Lazard's beating expectations. So I don't want to hear the Jets give up any more resources for Davante Adams. And we're at the point where the Jets need to start thinking about, do we sell? Because this team doesn't look like it's capable of winning a whole lot this year. So there are some guys who are not going to be back next year. There are some guys who are on the older side who are just losing their value. Tyron Smith is one of them. Tyron Smith has not lived up to expectations, but he's still got the reputation. He's still not a complete. I mean, bad, but he's not a complete disaster. I mean, we've seen complete disasters at left tackle. I mean, look at some of the backups the Jets have played in recent years at the position. You're telling me some team won't give up a late round pick for Tyron Smith? Morgan Moses is the same thing. Morgan Moses has been bad this year, but some team desperate for offensive line help, maybe they make a move. Mike Williams has been bad this year. The Jets have a lot of guys who've been bad this year, but maybe some team may throw a late round pick at you if they're desperate around the trade deadline. Maybe they think, you know what, this guy's better than what we've got, at least, even if he's kind of in decline. Maybe they think, getting in the playoff race will rejuvenate some of these guys. Jets should be thinking about selling right now. I mean, there's nothing that tells me this team should be a buyer right now. There's nothing that tells me this team should be trying to giving up future assets to add to this group right now, because this group's not good enough. 2-4, and at 2-4, again, you have to go 8-3 over the next 11 games. I don't think Tyron Smith. I don't think adding Devontae Adams is going to suddenly turn this into a good football team. This team has issues all over the place. They have issues on offense. They have issues on defense. And quite frankly, they still have issues on the coaching staff. They got rid of Robert Saleh, but it's not exactly a shocking thing that a bunch of coaches Robert Saleh hired have produced a product that still looks like a Robert Saleh coach team. I mean, should we be really surprised that the Saleh staff produced that result last night? The coaches Robert Saleh hired produced a product that looked like something Robert Saleh produced. We can't be shocked over that. And that's the type of thing that's going to hold this team back. This team, I hate to say it right now, I don't see a lot of hope for the Jets as currently constructed. And I know nobody wants to hear that, because that means we're heading for yet another rebuild. But it's where we are. We're at a point, we're 6 games into the season, where this just is not working. And beyond the fact it's not working, it's difficult to see how things start clicking for this football team. This team, it just doesn't feel like the type of team that's going to find itself. It doesn't feel like the type of team where things are going to get better right now. This is just a situation that feels hopeless. And, at the start of the show, I told you I was sitting around for an hour last night wondering, why do I support this team? Why do I put so much energy into this team? Why do I put so much emotion into this team? And I wish I could end on a more aspirational note, but I just don't know. I watched that game last night. I just couldn't believe what was happening. I couldn't believe that it was happening again. I couldn't believe I was putting myself through this stuff again. I feel if you feel the same way, if you feel the same way, let me know, because I feel your pain right now. It's just so frustrating. It's as frustrating as it's ever been. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on the podcast for us, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Send in your mailbag questions. Tomorrow we will do our weekly mailbag. Talk to you then.